How to date a mystery sabre. Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria and Easton Antique Arms. Now I'm going to show you three swords in this video very quickly. It's going to be a short one. But basically, how would you date this particular sabre based on its rather anonymous design? There's no monarch cipher on the blade, there's no decoration on the blade, it's not a regulation pattern. We can't just open up a book and say, oh, this is the 1796 pattern or the 1788 pattern or the 1803 pattern or whatever, because it doesn't conform to any pattern. So is this British? Is this American? Is this Dutch? Is this Spanish? We don't really know exactly, but it's probably within the British sphere, and I'm going to explain why super quickly. So first of all, we've got a horn grip, we've got this single-edged sabre blade, not particularly long, so it's not cavalry length, it's probably an infantry officer's sword. Brass hilt, that might be a clue, but the most important aspect for dating it here is the shape of this guard. Can you see how it bulges out right there? Now, because that bulges out right there, that immediately tells us that it's inspired by the 1796 light cavalry sabre. Hold that thought for a second. Now here's another sword. This is also not exactly a regulation pattern. These are all stock swords that are going to be going up very soon on the Easton Antique Arms website, incidentally linked below. And you'll notice this also has essentially a 1796 light cavalry pattern hilt, officer's hilt in this case, with this bulged out guard, sometimes referred to as a P guard here. This is essentially the 1796 light cavalry officer's sabre, but you know, the blade is a bit more slender. If you look at the false edge here on that tip, that's more like a 1788 actually. So the blade is actually more like a 1788 cavalry officer's sword, and it does have decoration on the blade, which almost certainly in this case signifies Solingen manufacture. Many of them were, that probably an imported blade from Germany. This sabre therefore is inspired also by the 1796 pattern. Okay, now if you don't know what the 1796 pattern is, this is it. This is the 1796 pattern light cavalry sabre. Very popular and very successful model of sabre, emulated in several other countries, most famously perhaps Prussia with the model 1811 Blücher, and that was based on the fact that the Prussians, who were fighting the French alongside the British, most famously at Waterloo, had purchased lots of British 1796s and they were being used by the Prussians and various other states who were fighting against Napoleon, including people like the Dutch and the Portuguese and others. So these were used by other militaries, not just the British, because the British, the nation of shopkeepers, as Napoleon called us, were supplying the Allied forces to fight against Napoleon alongside them. So later on they copied this model. So this was a hugely influential model of hilt, designed by John Gaspard Le Marchand, became a pattern in 1796. So we come back to this mystery sabre that we started the video with here. The fact that that has that guard. Now if it didn't have that guard, if it just had a straight knuckle bow, many people would date this sword to the 1770s, the 1780s, the kind of American War of Independence kind of period. However, it cannot be that early because it has a guard inspired by the 1796 light cavalry sabre, which means that whenever this does date to, it must be after 1796. Now there's a bunch of other evidence why we know that it wouldn't be much after that. This type of sword you don't really see around but beyond about 1805, 1810 in general. So this is fundamentally a style of sword, especially if we look at that pommel cap there, that which really harks back to the late 1700s. But the fact that it's got that P-shaped guard means it must be fairly close after 1796. So there we go, a sword which otherwise might be dated to the American War of Independence, for example, 1770s, let's say, in this case must date probably to the 1790s or very early 1800s. I hope that's been useful to some of you. Next time you're antiquing and antique hunting or collecting swords or trying to identify something in your collection or in your grandma's attic. Thanks a lot for watching. I have been Matt Easton. I will of course continue to be, and I'll see you back on the channel really soon. Cheers folks. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers folks.